Hello Internet, my name is Udi and welcome to this nerdy corner of the Internet that I inhabit. And speaking of nerdy, things are about to get real nerdy today. India and Pakistan hate each other. It's actually unique compared to most other enmities between countries. It's not like America and Cuba, or America and Iraq, or America and Iran, or America and Mexico, or America, or anything like that. It's quite different from anything else in world history and in our present day. The hatred that exists between the secular state of India and the Islamic state of Pakistan, which, by the way, these religious things will become important shortly, exists because of a long history of South Asia. And yeah, so today I'm going to try to explain that long, complicated history. Let's begin. So to understand any part of the history of India, you really have to understand the place of religion in the history of India, especially two specific religions, Hinduism and Islam. This is because the two religions play a key role in dividing the people of South Asia. Let's look at Hinduism first. So the foundations of Hinduism were laid thousands and thousands of years ago during the Vedic Age, before Greece, before ancient Greece even existed, before ancient China, before ancient Rome, before any of these things, well, ancient China kind of, but before any of these other things that we're all used to studying in ancient history, there was this other society in India that existed during the Vedic Age. Caucasian people, called the Aryans, migrated down from the Caucasus to South Asia and mingled with the people in the Indus River Valley and the Dravidians from southern South Asia. You know, the fact that a place called southern South Asia exists, it means that historians need to learn how to name things. The religion of the Aryans is grounded in a text called the Rig Veda, and while I usually don't care about religious texts in history because often the religion is more important, in this case, the religious text is very important because the Rig Veda is also one of the main religious texts of Hinduism. So how is it that this religious text from the Caucasus got into this religion that is just one of the most popular religions in the world, the third most popular religion in the world? How did that happen? Well, the Aryans kind of just disappeared into the background of Indian society because their race intermingled with the people of India, but their culture didn't disappear, because their culture was codified in the Rig Veda. And when the Aryans mingled with the native South Asian peoples, their culture got all jumbled up. And the Vedic Age is a time period in which all these cultures were jumbling up and creating the Indian culture that would permeate throughout Indian history. It's the Indian culture that you know today. That Indian culture was created thousands of years ago in this time period. And that Indian culture, you might be surprised, included the caste system, which was this huge, amazing, not in a good way, but amazing social hierarchy in which people were born into their castes. And because of this whole religious idea that I'm not going to get into right now, they basically couldn't go up or down social classes. There was no social mobility based on how much they worked. They would be in that social class for their entire life. However, they could get into other social castes by being reincarnated, which is a central belief in Hinduism, but that's not important. So they were stuck in their social position from birth until death. This was and is the foundation of Indian culture back then and today. But then later in Indian history, after the Vedic Age, a lot of new religions emerged, religions of salvation that sort of challenged this Hindu hegemony in India. Some of these religions were Buddhism and Jainism, but okay, these religions are not important because the main religion that actually challenged Hinduism was Islam. Or at least it was the first religion to challenge the political hegemony of Hinduism. So some brief background on Islam, if you don't know, it was founded by Muhammad. It was a set of beliefs that that his followers codified. Islam was started in 622 CE. It was written down a few years later. They started this huge caliphate that spread out throughout Asia and Africa. My brother's yelling in the background, I'm sorry. Enough background about Islam though. The first Muslims in India didn't actually pose a political threat to the hegemony of Hinduism because those first Muslims were traders that had come via the Silk Roads or the Indian Ocean trade routes. But these Muslim traders were still important because when you're trading with people, you want to get the best price. So you'll be arguing with them a lot, which leads to a lot of talking. But when you're not arguing about prices, you're going to be talking to them anyway because you're now friends after arguing with each other over prices, and then your ideas will get across and Your religion spreads. So Islam spread to India, not in huge batches, but in small increments. And also, Islam is one of the three missionary religions, along with Mahayana Buddhism and Christianity. So when there were Muslims in India, they spread their ideas inward towards the inside of the subcontinent. And also there would have been Muslim missionaries coming from Arabia to India just to spread their religion. But yeah, so now we know Islam spread to India in small increments, not big batches. There were missionaries, but how does this relate to the whole political challenge? Well, small increments, right? But there were so many of these small increments that lots and lots and lots of people started converting to Islam. Enough so that when Hindu hegemony in Indian politics was finally challenged by Muslims from the north, a lot of Indians didn't complain. So the first Muslims to politically challenge Hindu hegemony in India were the people who created the Delhi Sultanate. So by the 960s CE, there were a lot of Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms, but these kingdoms started coming under attack by Muslims from the north. So by the 960 CE, the Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms in northern South Asia, again, the fact that there is a northern South Asia means that historians need to be better at naming things. Those kingdoms started coming under attack by Muslim warlords. By the way, the emphasis here is on the warlords, not the Muslim. But the Muslim is also important, but it's not because of the Muslim. It's because of the warlord. So there was this guy, right? Warlord and everything. His name is just so weird, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. He wanted to create his own kingdom in India, but he died while he was putting it together. And then his slave was like, oh, I'm going to be my own master. So he took over this kingdom. And this kingdom is now known as the Delhi Sultanate. Its first dynasty is known as the Mamluks. Mamluk, in, I think, Arabic, means slave. So yeah, the slave dynasty, because all the successors were the children of slaves, and slaves' children are also slaves in this system. So the Delhi Sultanate lasted approximately 300 years before it was replaced by the Mughal Empire, which is descended from the Mongol Empire, you might have guessed. So yeah, two big Muslim states in India, lots of Muslims, way more Hindus. Now imagine, this is a place where, like, religion is the most important thing, right? To everyone there. These are, like, devout Hindus and devout Muslims, and there's, especially the Hindus, right? There's tons and tons of them, but then the people ruling over them are Muslims. That's gonna cause a problem, especially if you love your religion. Surprisingly, things went actually kind of okay, at least in a political sense. We'll get to why it wasn't okay, but you might be guessing it right now. What happens when you are different from the millions of people you're ruling over? Just think about that while we go on to the British. By the way, the British arrived. Yay! No, just kidding. They were horrible. They literally screwed up everything. Things were good for a while. The 19th century cruised on. Queen Victoria ruled over the most amazing empire the world had ever seen. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing. Everything was great. And Hindus and Muslims, most importantly, never fought. Well, actually, you know, I wouldn't say that. What are you saying? Don't kill my vibe here. What are you saying? What are you saying? Basically, this whole time, with the rising number of Muslims in the country, along with the Muslims ruling over a majority of Hindus, the Hindus and Muslims never really got along with each other. Surprise, surprise. Tensions had been rising for centuries, but also there had been very good government for centuries, so there wasn't much like actual violent conflict, but there was conflict. But not like physical conflict. It was like talking conflict. It was peaceful conflict. But it wasn't nice conflict. So tensions basically, when Muslim traders arrived, was like here, right? But then, later, with the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal Empire, and then the British, because they didn't understand Hindus and Muslims, and they just didn't know what was going on, and they just thought, oh, well, they're all the same people, right? And there you go, I've explained to you why and how these two religions divide the people of South Asia very well. But I believe my mission wasn't to just explain why those people are divided, but to explain why India and Pakistan hate each other. So let's go a little bit further into world history. What happened next?